I'm so happy today. I have Elizabeth Dufraine with me, and she has been highly involved with community gardening. This is something that I find very valuable. I'm fortunate. I live in 45 acres and I have lots of land to work with. Most of it is forested, but I do have lots of land and space. But we're going to uncover a little bit about what it could mean for your community and the people in there to have a community garden. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Patrice. I'm really excited to be here and to share community gardening.
Yeah,
It's just spring now, and the community gardens haven't really started per se for gardeners to get out there. But we're just so busy in preparing for the people to arrive.
like you tell us a little bit about your background. It's been like 30 years you've been involved
Yes,
with.
I've been fortunate to join an existing garden that has been almost 40 years, and it started off as the Griesbach Garrison Veterans Garden, and they when the base moved from Calgary up to north of Edmonton, the land became available for different development. And during that time, they opened up the garden space to civilians, to anyone in the community that wanted to get on a wait list. And I was able to get on a wait list and join the community. And it was just such a wonderful change for me.
Yeah, because you live in a condo or an apartment, hey?
Yes, yes. I live in a condo and it's on the northeast side of the building. So I really didn't have opportunity to grow much inside with natural sunlight. And I also had a very, very small yard, which was dominated by an apple tree on the south. So it was a lot of shade. So I just love the apple tree, by the way. Uh,
Mhm.
but I was not able to grow any vegetables and I was really missing that.
Yeah, and so like I'm interested. So do you know like the history when they so the for the it was a veterans garden. So was it people like living in the veterans home or what?
It would be
I'm interested in that history there.
the military families that were literally stationed on the base, on the garrison.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it would also include veterans who used to work on the base.
All right.
And they had a very, very, very large garden. And over the years, you can imagine the depth of the soil and how good it was. But when the active base moved north about 4 miles and joined with the Calgary base, that left a lot of the families, of course, that were active moved north a few miles, and it left a lot of open space for other people. Now, as it happened, uh, there was, I think,
Canada
Edmonton
lands.
and the city of Edmonton developed it now into just a wonderful community, a wonderful residential community. But as that happened, where our exact gardens were, became a drainage lake. So
Hey.
they were taking the soil out of that area and putting it into the middle of the base area and
Yeah.
developed a huge hill. But gradually, of course, our gardens diminished down smaller as houses were built in the area and as the drainage lake was taking away the garden space that we had. We were offered a chance to actually set up a new garden spot on the south side of the hill. And that hill actually became a 24-acre park in the middle of the Griesbach community
Oh, wow. So
area.
now you've got your community garden and you've got the park right there. Talk about a perfect situation. So,
Oh, it's perfect. You know, we can walk the various sidewalks up to the top of the hill and get some wonderful views, and we have a lot of people, going by as visitors. It's an ideal spot, really.
yeah.
And the amount of land that we were given, it's parkland, of course. Uh, so it was almost 2.5 acres of land that we have to cultivate.
Hmm.
And when we're preparing the soil and whatever, and then marking out the plots, we have 144 plots available So that's 144 individuals or people that can come in and garden each
Wow.
season.
Wow. So with this, like, it's owned by the parks, it's parkland.
It's City of Edmonton Parkland, yes.
Okay. But and so then it was just like I'm trying to imagine. So who was it, or how would you go about acquiring a community garden? Do you know
Oh,
those? Like the how to get one started?
that is a really, really interesting question because community gardens are as varied as the plants and the gardeners themselves. There's so many different types. There's so many different ways of organizing it. There's so many different ways. Uh, I'm more familiar with those that are developed in the urban environment, and in a way it's like urban gardening, but the extra dimension is community added to urban gardening, where it's not just your household, it is someone else in your neighborhood that you get to share experiences with.
Yeah.
So the way you get started is you need to identify the need in your area. You can look around and see, get your Google fingers out and see if there's any other type of community garden in your area. You might want to join one and just see how it works for a year. And if you don't have one in your area, you may choose to launch one on your own. So it's a matter of, what need is there and what vision do you have for it? Is it going to be flowers only? Is it going to be vegetables only? Especially in an urban environment, we really don't get into having livestock or, chickens or that type of thing because they're usually banned in most urban environments. So depending on what you envision, get someone else involved. And then the two of you can become the four of you. And now you have enough to get started. It can be as simple as looking around. A community garden can be a garden in a school.
Yeah,
And
I
it could,
was involved in that. Like, I used to work in the schools there, and always my dream, they have these big playgrounds that are just like an open space, and it's like we should be having a garden here, and all the ropes and everything, trying to get it established. And I'd even rounded up, some grants, stuff like that, but we could never get that final push because the thing that stopped ours from coming about was the water had to be turned on from inside the school. So in the summer, it was like how are you going to open the school and turn on the water? And it was kind of, after, it needed more planning. We could have got a cistern or something like that. And so that you just have that filled, and other water catchment ways of, that we could have put something, but that was kind of the thing that stopped us. But I think it's beautiful here how when this space came open that they actually offered it to the community. It wasn't like the community going to them and asking for it.
it was more a continuation because they were taking away the other established garden. The garden was offered a spot somewhere in the locale of northern Edmonton, and they eventually offered the spot in the park area to be developed. So the development was the initial soil brought in and whatever was not what we had to do. It was all part of the Lands Canada, City of Edmonton, and the developer actually helped that area to be developed. And there was one year we didn't have a chance to garden because the soil wasn't ready, and it was too late to really get started that year.
And I bet you people really missed it that year, hey?
Oh, we did. Yeah, we just appreciated the next year more.
Yeah.
But,
So
but
tell
for
me,
launching, For launching a garden, I think the other key at the very, very start, before you really get into planning too far or really getting your hopes set one way or another, is actually look to your government, look to your city, look to what plans are already established. For instance, the gardening community is within the city, and the things that are offered is through Sustainable Food Edmonton, and they offer various grants. And we have a lot of programs. We have programs for start a garden in your school kits. And those are supported by business and industry, like the Alberta Motor Association also like offers grants to start things up. There's a lot of funding and a lot of help out there. And I believe in Edmonton we have over 80 established community gardens, of which ours is the largest, and the second largest is almost as big, and it's on university land.
Oh, wow.
And
I never heard that, that it's actually the provincial government that has the sustainable food.
no,
Or
this is the city government. City of Edmonton has it. Yeah.
wow. I never heard of anything like that. So do some digging, folks. You never know what's out there. And so tell me here, like, so this is for your community. And tell us a little bit how it pulls the community together and some of the interactions that can happen. And
Well, I think some of the strongest relationships are developed amongst the volunteer team that actually manages the garden. And it's we have a series of sponsors that each will look after a row. So we have row A through H.
yeah,
And then we have some specialized roles, such we have a soil manager who goes out and rents the tractor and does the tilling and the cultivating and all of the things of that nature, and make sure that we have the right compost at the right time in the right area, things along that line. We're large enough that we offer like small equipment and basic tools for those people who have never gardened before. And we have 2 sheds where we keep the various materials so that they can get started. And so
yeah.
I think that's a big part of the community there. So we have a person in charge of maintaining all the small equipment.
And so that
And
idea too, so you've got the older, more experienced gardeners, and that in a community garden like that, they're there to help the newer ones, hey? Or
that's right. And in the same way, we also have the young to help the older.
yeah,
The, where we have a lot of very of people that have small families, so that they can get together and their kids can play together and share with each other how their pumpkins are growing.
yeah, yeah. What
Uh,
a wonderful space, hey, for that. Because I know that the kids, when they're growing something, they love to show off their stuff. And what better way than having all your neighbors in there with you?
and 2 twins really captivated us last year because their mom wanted them to learn about gardening, and it was a little bit late when she decided to get going. So she took them to a nursery and said, whatever you want to grow, pick out the plants, and that's what we're going to plant. So of course, pumpkins, and one picked cauliflower.
Oh, wow.
I
Oh,
know. But anyway, so she in her 20 by 20-foot plot, she marked off the 2 areas with little white fences for each twin to have their own particular area, and they planted their stuff, and however they wanted to plant it, that's the way it went. Like they're going to learn, right?
yeah. And I love that too. Like for kids, let them do whatever they're capable of. And that's a terrific way of learning too, that you're making the decisions and then you can see the results from your decisions, and it makes for making better decisions too in the future.
But after that was done, what captivated most of the gardeners that sort of gardened around this particular plot was the kids. Between their 2 little plot areas were digging holes. And they were digging holes, and they were putting water in the holes, and they were digging more holes. And Their whole experiment was now, what is going to happen to these holes?
Yeah.
And we come around and just ask, like, okay, why are you digging the holes? What are you planting there? Oh, nothing. We're just digging holes. So talk about grounding. They were just so wonderful in whatever they were exploring. They were exploring, and it was and their mom was such a great enabler of their explorations.
Yeah, I love that too, like with kids. And I always encourage, I love to get kids involved in gardening. And there, I'll just include here, one of my favorite quotes is actually by Robert Brault. And he says, why try to explain a miracle to a child when you can just show them how to garden, teach them how to garden? And to me, that's what it is, that miracle of a little seed turning into a food producing
Mhm.
plant, and that they can have that being a part of the growing process, and that freedom to explore, because there's always so much happening. And I'm curious, did their gardens produce much?
Oh, the cauliflowers turned out beautiful.
Oh,
Yeah, and I think they were the ones that were the yellow type, the golden type.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And their pumpkins took over the rest of the garden.
yeah.
So I think they did very well. And I
Right.
think at the end of the season, their mom said, well, next year we're going to start with seedlings at home so that they'll get to see that part of it too.
Yeah. Wow, what a wonderful learning experience, eh? And so do you ever do like pull the people that are involved in the community gardens, like having a harvest feast or anything like that?
We have we haven't really been involved in a lot of events for the community, and I think that's something that it's more the community as a gathering spot. We
Right.
do have a lot of visitors that will walk through and enjoy it that way as well. I think it's hard to manage 144 families at once
Right,
to
right.
come
It's
through and
hard.
do these types of things.
Yeah.
So if we do have events, it'll often be a sponsor may work with their two rows to say, let's get together for something.
Okay.
But what we do, the volunteers do get together and and work. Usually it's a work bee and then a little bit of socializing along with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that too, like in a community garden there too, I always imagine that, like I've never been a part of a community garden. I've always had a garden of my own. I've always had space. And when I didn't, I would gather up some pots and whatever. I always had to have a garden of some sort. And but I've never been involved in a community garden. But I imagine too, like if you have from different cultures, the different types of foods, like to be able to learn from each other that way. Or do people like share, plants or seeds or things like that? Or
The sharing is incredible, both within the community and outside the community. We have places that will normally sell their seeds at the end of the season. Will give over the seeds that are, sell by 2024. We'll get those and have them in to give out to gardeners.
wow,
So we have there's a group in southern Edmonton that part of their school program, they have a greenhouse and they will actually grow a wide variety of tomatoes.
oh,
And
okay,
then through the food sustainability group, they offer the tomatoes to whoever wants to come down and pick out a few things. It's not just tomatoes, it's other products as well that they have in their little greenhouse. And then we'll be able to take it back and offer to gardeners in our community.
wow,
And other greenhouses become very, very active towards the, in later in June or whatever, they would actually give away, pallets of their plants as well.
yeah,
We have other farmers who will say, like we've got, 20 bags of seed potatoes left over. Do you want them? And it's, we have the broader community really, really helps as well.
wow, wow.
So within the The variety. Oh, the variety is just so wonderful. I've learned so many uh, Asian plants.
Okay.
Uh, but it's so interesting. People will come along and say, what is that reddish colored plant, yada, yada. And one will say, one who may have a Vietnamese background will say, it's such and such. And someone with a Chinese background might say, no, no, it's this.
Yeah.
and
It's known as
so,
this in our culture. Yeah.
yeah, so we're learning a lot of different plants. And uh, basically, you can grow what you'd like in your plant as long as it's legal.
Yeah.
Uh, you can't, like we don't want anyone growing marijuana or anything of that nature or
Yeah.
tobacco.
Yeah.
So,
And
but
the opium poppies, hey? Like I always grow those in my garden, but they're not legal, are they?
I think some varieties are, like not all of the poppies are suitable
Well,
for
it
the
was like
illegal
the
use.
poppy somniforum or something it was, and they're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. And I don't know, I had heard stories about some an old woman was growing them in her garden, and they told her to rip them out because they weren't legal. But it's like, oh well. If it's not, if it's just yeah, but we won't go down that rabbit hole.
No, 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 we won't.
There's so much other.
But the basic rule is if it is something that has a lot of seeds, like an amaranth or something like that, that could scatter the seeds elsewhere and then get, through the cultivation process, get spread through a third of the garden. We want people to make sure that they harvest it before the seeds really have an opportunity
Okay.
to spread far.
Yeah,
And a lot of plants, you can actually make use of them before they're seeded, even
yeah,
if the seeds are something that you'd normally harvest. So as long as it doesn't interfere with the neighbors,
yeah, yeah.
then go ahead and grow it. For the first time, we had one gardener who we invited late because another gardener couldn't garden that year. And they had already set up a huge garden and planted it in their backyard.
Oh,
So they actually planted wheat, oats, and barley in their 20-foot by 20-foot plot. And it
oh,
was just beautiful, just absolutely beautiful. I don't know how much of a harvest they got, but that was the
I'm
first
thinking
time
of
that we had grains of that nature growing in our garden.
yeah,
The
yeah.
variety is incredible. The people are incredible. The languages are incredible. I haven't used it yet, but I actually bought a language translator so that
Wow.
an AI translator that could be used remotely to be able to communicate better if we needed to.
That's it. I never thought of that. That could be a real good place for learning different languages. I love learning different languages, and usually to have a language stick, you've got to be able to use it. And if you're there all season, gardening, that gives you ample opportunity to use it. So it's one, I never
Yeah.
thought of that.
And we have little subsets of people that, some always garden in the evening, or some will garden in the morning or the early morning, and you start meeting across the whole garden area, different groups of people, and you get to recognize each other. And even if we're basically having different languages, uh, especially amongst some of the elderly people, like we have a lot of Ukraine heritage in the area. So they can often find other people that speak their native language. And for those that don't, we there's a tremendous amount you can communicate by just offering a plant to somebody, and smiling, and just by hand motions, and then they'll point to something, and that it's what is it? So you sort of break off a leaf and say, and
Right.
eat it, and yeah, this is how you do this type of thing, and it's really a beautiful challenge to be able to interact by motion, by hand motion, and of course by sharing emotion.
Yeah.
That is such a fundamental to our building of relationships.
Yeah.
So it's community. It's wonderful, a wonderful opportunity to be physically active and to interact with individuals that you normally wouldn't interact with,
Yeah.
and to be able to broaden your horizons and actually share things. Like, we share a lot of the produce towards the end as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, that's what I found like I find with gardeners, they're usually very generous. And I know myself, I like to get seedlings started and I always have extras. So, share that around or one part of your crop will do really, really well. And there's always extras to share or maybe maybe one season your cucumbers didn't do as well, but the neighbors did. And they'll have extras to share. And I just love that. To me, when I really got into gardening, it brought about a really that sense of abundance, that it's a wonderful and that there's always and that's always my wish for anyone that gardens, that they have that abundance and to enjoy and to share.
Sometimes the sharing is not voluntary. As you can well imagine, we're in an open area, we're in a park, we don't have gates per se. We put up temporary fencing along the sides, and we have fencing along the north side, but we have access to the public off the highway part.
Right.
And it's I'll just tell you one very, very cute story. We had one gardener who was so proud of his cucumber plant that was producing the first cucumber, and it was growing, and it was just, oh, it was so beautiful, and he was so proud of it. And it was just getting up to that 7-inch long size, and he says, oh, I'm going to get it tomorrow. And he went out and it wasn't there.
Oh no. Oh.
But what was there was a loony. Someone had taken the cucumber and left a loony.
Oh no. Well, it would buy another package of seeds for next year.
Oh, I'm sure that plant grew many, many more cucumbers, but that's one story. We have last year, everyone lost all of their corn that was sort of ripe across the garden. It was the corn would be picked here and there, and each gardener would say, well, I lost some of my corn. I lost some of my corn, and I lost some of my corn too, personally. And you could see that they were husking it as they were going through the garden. So there'd be
Oh,
little husks here and there. And further down, there's another community area in the park area where there's a little rotunda area, and I think a place where you could actually have a little fire. And of course, I think they had someone decided
corn roast.
that they're going to have a corn roast.
Yeah.
And it's that's the abundance. We allow for the birds to have some, and some for the
Yeah.
pests, and some for the people. And the actual part that we're working with is communication, because it would say it's a community garden, and there's so many different ways of organizing community gardens. And a number of people very legitimately think or say
Means that for
that
the
it
community.
is for the community, and I live here in this community, therefore I can come through and pick what I need.
Right. Right.
So we're working more and more on the communication of it, making sure that our signage is going to say that these are privately rented plots. Come in, stay on the pathways, but don't pick anything. You
Yeah.
know, they're just trying to make it clearer that someone else has put a lot of work into this,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's not community in the sense of free for all.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of that where people will put out stands for free food? Like a free book. I've seen like free book stands but free food stands so that when there is an abundance of something, you can have like a little table, like help yourself kind of thing. Have,
Um,
I've seen them online.
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Um, the other large community garden on the university area, they have a different way of doing it, where the garden produce is gathered as a group and they have their tables to sell it. And
Oh,
then the proceeds of the sales, once whatever the expense of the garden, the proceeds of the sales are donated to a charity of their choice.
oh, that's a beautiful idea. I love
Yeah. And so that they would actually buy some of the produce that they had grown themselves, but they would also, sell at other markets as well if there was an overabundance.
Yeah.
So there's very, very many models. Our model is if you grow it in your plot, it's yours to harvest, and you can't sell it on the grounds.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So if we leave it totally open to whatever people do with their produce afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. We had in our town, they had put up some raised beds, and the 4-H takes it on and grows it, and it's open for, it's right by the seniors home too, so that the seniors can partake and look through the windows and watch it growing too. But so they grow that, and it is open for people to help yourself. It's
I
their
I
product.
think some of the most fascinating community gardens are those that are uh, pop-up gardens. And I think it's the fifth year that the city of Edmonton's doing pop-up gardens. And you have to apply for it, and there's a limited number of them. And you sort of need your organization approval, but you might have a condo group or you might have an old age home or whatever, and you want a pop-up garden. And a pop-up garden, they'll come out with the containers, that are raised off the ground,
Okay.
provide the soil, and you do the planting. So it can be a wonderful opportunity for someone who is in a retirement home or retirement area. They might have a courtyard, and people have been gardeners in the past, and they're so missing it, or just missing enjoying the flowers. And you could dedicate this to whoever wants to come in and volunteer and plant flowers, perhaps. And it's at a level where they don't have to crouch or bend or dig in the soil, and there it is. And they have it for the season. They have it for, and then at the end of the year, the city comes and takes everything away.
Wow.
But it's a great introduction because now you have a group of people who may say, you know, let's
That's
see if we can let's see if we can make this more permanent and get, a couple of containers out here, and we'll look after it.
a beautiful idea. I love that. It just opens up, like there's all sorts of things. And so like I know over in England and that they have more the allotment gardens where they have their little sheds, and they actually, like, you'll spend a good part of your day out there, and it's almost like little, I've seen some of the pictures, like a little cabin almost on your allotment, and that, so it's all different types of things
Yeah.
that you
Yeah,
can.
one of my immediate gardeners close by me last season, her mother went back to Poland where they do have that type of garden as well. And it's just a green area that is surrounded by high-rise buildings.
Yeah.
And people who will actually set up their sheds, and they have their area and they have their barbecues, and it's the whole social heart of the communities.
Yeah, they're that I the social heart, and around food. I mean, how many times do we gather around food? I mean, it's always a part of our celebrations and everything. And here it's the coming together and the growing of it. And yeah,
And there's a certain amount of pride too to be able to say, this is a recipe that my grandmother had, and she grew this type of plant, and I can't get it at the supermarket, but I can grow it, and here it is, and I'm sharing with my grandchildren and my neighbors a little bit of history.
yeah, yeah. And that sharing of the recipes too, like if people, like I love to pick the brains of the old, I call them the old timers, with the, for, because that was kind of a skill that it was almost a necessity, to be able to grow some of your own food. and it might turn that way again, but I know I love to be able to grow my own food, but I always like to pick their brains like for how they grew certain things, or they had a certain way of tuning into nature, or like the just the years and years of experience they've had in gardening and growing. And I found too, like, the heirloom seeds that where they've kept seeds, for generations, and pass it on. And it says, yeah, this, my grandparents had bought over from the old country, and it's such
Do you
a
know why it's called heirloom?
no.
Okay, I was reading this. So this is one of the stories. I'm not sure it's the right one or the only one. But when the West was being won,
Okay.
when the colonies in America were basically along the East Coast, and you would have two people being married, and they were going to go out west. One of the things that was given to them was handfuls of seed, heirloom seeds. It was actually their heirloom that when they did get out to where they were going to make their homestead, they had seeds to plant.
Ah, and they inherited these.
It was their heirloom.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I thought, well, that resonates, maybe it's a story, but it certainly resonates. And I know, like the apple tree that's in our yard, um, well before there were limits on what plants could be brought in,
Right.
um, there were some really, really good apple trees. I think we have 400 different species of apple trees around the Edmonton area
Wow.
that that have grown from uh, the early 1900s that
Wow.
have been planted back then. And our neighbor at the time had was a well accomplished as an orchard. I'm not sure what the word would be, but he had learned from people who had orchards over in Europe. And he also knew people that were here that had some really good varieties of apples. So he took a North American apple tree as a stock, and he grafted in two different types of apples that were from the Ukraine and Poland area. So we
Wow.
have an apple tree that is heirloom as well.
Yeah.
And it produces two types of very beautiful eating and cooking apples.
Wow. Wow. That's just the magic of gardening. Wow. It's what you can produce. That's too, I love that too, that you can try, like you were telling that one story about, that you had this favorite recipe and you can't get the ingredients from the store, but you can grow it. And I love that too, that it gives you that opportunity where you can try all different, like the purple carrots. And one year I tried all these different types of potatoes. I had the banana finger potatoes and the purple potatoes. There's the ones that had the purple skin and really white flesh, but ones that had purple skin and purple flesh.
Purple, purple, yes.
Yeah, I'd make a potato salad with the purple potatoes that had the purple flesh, and I had farm eggs, bright yellow yolks, and the radishes and the green onions, and it was
Oh,
so colorful. It was just wonderful, and a health hint.
you make me want to try to grow some again this year.
Yeah, yeah, like all the things you can experiment with, and a little health hint. Everybody always says, for make sure you get all your nutrients. So eat the colors of the rainbow. So there, if you've got a garden spot, then you can grow all different color veggies.
I think another aspect of community gardening is the expertise that longtime gardeners have, especially in pest control without using pesticides.
Huh?
So in this is part of the city requirements for having the land, like we can't put pesticides on the land. So we have to figure out ways to handle any pests that may come along. And just being able to identify what they are or to identify what a fungus is, we have several people that are very, very skilled at this is what it is, like take the leaves off, take them home, garbage them, seal them away, and it's just do not, yada yada.
Here.
Yeah, or oh, that's a cutworm. Here's what you need to do, and you need to dig around and actually find. They're usually in pairs, so if you find one, look around for another foot around in the soil to see if you can find the second one, and just a lot of ways to be able to handle them. And one way that, of course, we want to handle them is to bring in the birds, to bring in the wildflowers for pollination. The wildflowers bring in the bees. We usually plant some really, really nice sunflowers, and it's just, you can sit there and watch the birds and the bees
Yeah, yeah.
just for hours. It's just so relaxing. And one one farmer, some people put up a little bit of fencing around their areas, and there were birds were crammed side by side all the way along
Oh,
along the fence, just taking their rest and doing their thing. We have a lot of rabbits, of course, not as many as we used to. There's a being on a 24-acre park, and wildlife has been encroaching into the urban environment. So there's been a fair amount of coyotes as well. And I'm not sure, how the den management is going, but the rabbits have actually taken over the community garden area more as a haven for them.
yeah, right, because the coyotes will get chased away.
Yeah, and so we have a lot of rabbits. So yeah, it's almost guaranteed that if you're the first one to go out and plant a whole bunch of little transplants, and they love they love they love broccoli, and they love the lettuces, and they love bean tops, and so if you're the first one to have it out there, you're almost guaranteed to have provided a banquet to the bunnies.
Bunnies. Yeah. I remember one year I had in my garden, I had moles in there, and so I was putting out they really liked my cabbage seedlings, and I had a bigger plant too, that broccoli, and I planted it out there, and they'd pulled out these most of my little cabbage ones, but there's this big broccoli plant, and I thought, oh, they won't touch that, it's too big. And then I came out the next day, and they had it halfway down the hole. It was just like the Bugs Bunny, cartoons where it comes out and it's halfway down the hole. And I was like, oh my,
Oh,
and like actually I'd given up on that year. They were so bad. Everything that was cultivated in that garden, they had taken out. Even had been given some strawberry plants, and I planted them, and they left them for quite a while, but then those two, it's just because it was freshly cultivated, so I actually left that plot and moved to a different area that, like, I had lots of cats too, but they wouldn't go down to the front. And my other plot was closer to the house, and I just let that go. But then I was supposed to have, like, my niece and her family of 3 kids and her husband were going to be living on the land with us. And I thought, well, I've got a new family here, more mouths to feed, better get a garden going. And so our neighbor had a machine, and he, like, cause it was all overgrown with quackgrass, and I let the raspberry patch take over a good part of it too. And so he came out, and I got it all set up, and I got it's like a windmill, or like those little toys that you had as a kid, but it was metal. So I had stuck one of those on a stake, and it vibrates the soil, and the moles don't like that. And so after I got my new garden put out, and I amended the soils and got it all good, and they never came back. They moved to the neighbors.
I'm going to remember that particular remedy if we have moles.
Yeah, it works really, really good. And like I had a hard time finding, it's got to be a heavy enough metal, to vibrate. And it's beautiful ornament too, and you can actually make your own if you can get, some tin sheets, and there's patterns you can get on the web and that. So, but
Wouldn't
yeah,
that be a great do-it-yourself craft? If we had that particular problem, we could invite parents with kids to come around and
yeah,
and
make little
make
videos.
these things as a group. I remember one time we're actually responsible for the plumbing. So we have all
Oh,
of our own pipes. So that every 6 gardens has an outlet, a water outlet for city water. But we also have the barrels. We're not allowed to compost on the site other than green compost that gets tilled in. And we're not allowed to really get compost that way. And we're not allowed to harvest rainwater because we just have the 2 small sheds. And so
okay.
we have the barrels that we put out and then fill with the city water. So I like using that because the chlorine has already evaporated out of
Yeah,
it by the time
yeah,
it's a little bit warmer as well by the time it's sat in the
yeah,
barrels.
yeah, yeah. That's all the things to consider, eh? And
Yeah.
so some last tips here, and if for people that like, because you've been involved in kind of the organizing too end of it. So could you give some tips for folks if they want to start up a community garden, or some of your best tips for community gardening?
Oh, I hardly know where to start. I think if you're interested, look around for the need, look for someone like-minded, start thinking about it, start looking for what already exists to help you in setting up a garden. It doesn't have to be big or small. I recommend starting small, starting off with a pilot. You might want to just start it off in your own backyard with 2 other neighbors because the community part is actually just getting outside of your household to be able to share in doing something together and to learning together, right?
Yeah,
Uh, if as you get into a more formal garden, you really need to decide what type you want. Is it going to be in the ground like ours is? Or is it going to be in containers? Or is it going to be in raised beds? Or is it going to be a hydroponics inside? You know,
yeah,
it's gardening with a component of community outside of your normal household, right? So that's the true heart of it.
yeah,
And if you get formalized, then you need to know what your boundaries are and what your intent for the garden is, and to make sure that that is in a type of contract as you're inviting people outside of your core group. Make sure you have a contract so that people know how to behave. And within that contract, you may also need to know as it gets larger, even 8 families is large enough that you need some type of organization with it. You need to be able to know how we're going to finance the operating cost ongoing.
right. Right.
And you need to have a bit of a budget to be able to even establish the first 8 plots, right? And you can get help from other sponsors, like go to greenhouses, go to your city, go to, see what's available for funding.
There's lots of
And
grants.
many of them are supplemented with a fee to the gardeners. Like we charge $50 that covers our operational costs for that year.
Yeah, yeah,
And that will there'll be a little bit left over so that we can do soil improvement, every other year, things along that line.
yeah.
So I think those are my best tips to have a contract. And the last one is, especially when we're working with volunteers, make sure that you're working to everyone's strengths and working to their timelines and family commitments. And it just works that way.
All right, all right. And if people were wanting to get hold of you, uh, like, are you open to people contacting you if they want to learn more about community gardening, or?
I am, but I'm not really set up yet. Uh,
Okay.
what I do have, I have a very basic website. It's www.gardensforus.com.
Okay.
And instead of, it's the letter 4, it's the number 4. So it's
Okay.
GARDENS 4 us.com. And I will be, I'm working on getting a mobile app out.
Oh, beautiful.
And I'm also working on a book on how to launch a community garden. So it's
Oh,
a little bit more difficult to get a hold of me right now, but by email, communitygardensforus@gmail.com is the other way to get a hold of me in the interim.
community gardens for us
At
dot
gmail.com.
com.
At
At,
gmail.com.
all right. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. I really appreciate this and I really enjoy it. This is something that's right up my alley.
I know we covered a lot, and that
Yeah.
was very enjoyable too. Thank you for having me.
Bye.